Hi there. In this section I'd like to share with you some of the myths that are thrown around about intermittent fasting, which aren't true. So I'd like to share with you and debunk some of these myths that fly around. So the first one is that I will lose muscle mass. The second one is if I don't eat, if I skip a meal, then when I eat I'll put weight on. In other words, starvation mode kicks in. And also, the other one is that if I eat, I need to eat little and often to keep my energy levels up. So we're going to look at those three in depth now. So the first one is the will I lose muscle mass? So over the millennia, our bodies have adapted to feast and famine. And this is a way that our body has adapted to use fat as fuel after all the glucose has gone. So in other words, when you eat a meal, for example, you will use some of the glucose in that food instantly, and then you will store some as glycogen into the liver and into the surrounding tissues, and then the rest is stored as fat. And that's what insulin does, the hormone. It is a storage hormone and it will want to pack away things. So that's what it does. And our bodies have adapted to that in terms that once you've used up your stores of glucose and glycogen, it will then use the stores of fat. It gets a higher calorific value for fat. That's why it does it. It will not eat away at your muscle. Okay, so that's the first one. Just remember that your body will use everything it can before it will start to use muscle, which in intermittent fasting protocols, that won't happen. Okay, so the second one is about the starvation mode. Now, this is something that often crops up, is that, oh, if I go all day and then I have a meal in the evening, as soon as I eat that, it's going to store it as fat because I haven't had food all day and it doesn't know when it's going to get its next meal, and this is how our body reacts, and this is oh my God, am I doing the right thing? This is actually, we can use this as a simple analogy whereby I use the fridge and freezer. Okay, so what it is that when you eat food, you have your instant use of glucose, which is in the food. Your body will use some of that food as instant energy, and then it will then store in the fridge, which is easy to get to. Just go in your kitchen, open your fridge. It will store sugar as glycogen because it's very easy to change back into glucose. Okay, and then the rest will be stored as fat, just like we mentioned a few moments ago, and that's done by the hormone insulin. Now, what happens is that after about 6 to 8 hours of non-eating, you've used up your stores of your glucose and the glycogen from the fridge. So your body is now actually going to the freezer to use the fat stores. Okay? Now, what happens then later in the day when you haven't eaten and you're using fat stores, when you eat, insulin will then, well, first of all, you use glucose that's to use first of all from the food, and then what it'll do is that you'll then store all the fridge up first before storing anything extra as fat. Okay, so what I want to try and get across here is that just because you don't eat all day doesn't mean to say when you eat you're going to store it as fat, because that's not true. Your body will actually use that food, like I say, to use it as energy straight away, and it will store as glycogen before it starts to store as fat. And that actually is a lot to do with the intermittent fasting protocol, is that it's about having that fasting period with an eating period. And and the last one I'd like to talk about is the fact that we need to eat little and often, or eat regularly, to keep up our metabolism, our energy levels. Well, it really doesn't matter whether you have one big meal, 2 bigger meals in a day, or whether you eat, every 4 hours. Your metabolism will respond the same way. Okay, so it doesn't matter really. But what does matter is the fact that you have an eating window and you have a fasting window in terms of the intermittent fasting, and to get the benefits from that. I don't think there's anything wrong with eating every 3 or 4 hours, as long as it's good quality food, and also it's very good for helping people to keep good portion control and also the right choices of food. So it does work, but as I've said before, it doesn't work as well as intermittent fasting. So that's it for this section, and we can cut there. How's that?